Jacob continues his journey to the land of Haran, and from reading the previous chapters and the circumstances surrounding Jacob, it appears that Jacob is a new man after the meeting with God. The opening verse explains that Jacob lands among the people of the East. Make no mistake about it, Jacob has gotten this far only because God blessed the trip. As we've read throughout Genesis thus far, Abraham was blessed by God many times. And often, wells were used as blessings. And that's what we see here with Jacob, as the place he comes to sees a well with 3 flocks of sheep. The shepherds at this well were waiting for rest of the sheep to come so they could move the stone in front of the well. And this stone was in place to keep the water clean from dirt, bugs, and other possible parasites, as well as away from intruders like wild animals. Jacob speaks to these men and asks them where they are from, and their response was Haran. The first handful of verses here in chapter 29 illustrates that God was lining up Jacob with the right people and sending him in the right direction. And the shepherds were not only from Haran, but they also knew Laban. It does appear that God sent Jacob to this very location, to this very well on purpose, and not by accident or happenstance. It's interesting to note that Jacob gives a direct order to these men. But we are not sure why, but it's clear that he instructs them to go finish in water and feeding the sheep. At this point in time, who is Jacob to give such orders? While we are not told, the reason he gave such orders may be due to the fact the shepherds told him Rachel was on her way, and he wanted to observe and spend time with her. But the men did not take orders because they were used to performing the task a particular way, not the way Jacob had instructed. Despite striking out with the shepherds, Jacob does meet Rachel. Isaac's story does have similarities with Abraham's journey, and Jacob's story is starting to have some similarities with both Abraham and Isaac. Abraham's servant was sent to find a wife for Isaac, and she found Rebekah, who went out to get water from a well for the family. And here Jacob is next to a well when he encounters Rachel for the first time. When Rachel arrives with the sheep, Jacob takes control and moves the stone away, and Rachel waters them. Perhaps Jacob understood the similarities between the meeting with Rachel and the encounter of Abraham's servant with his mom, Rebekah, and he knew this was his wife-to-be. The servant asks God for Isaac's future wife to water the camels. And this is what Rebekah did, and now, here we see Rachel doing the same. Jacob moving the stone was an act of kindness, I'm sure. But it was also his way of showing his strength to Rachel, and this was then, and still is a common practice among men. As men, we show out in front of women whether it's right or wrong. Jacob had not only become brave and bold, but he apparently had some form of emotions come over him. He did water the flock, but he also kissed Rachel. And after kissing her, he started crying out loud. Why? He was happy and filled with joy, no doubt, as he understood that God's plan was playing itself out. And God was truly in the midst, but also, he was full of emotions for Rachel. Remember, it was Isaac that sent Jacob to find his wife, so he's starting to put 2 and 2 together. Rachel was probably confused because she did not know Jacob, so this gesture was quick, to say the least. Jacob did explain himself and inform Rachel that they were cousins, and that he was Rebekah's son, who she probably knew something about, as Rebekah was Rachel's dad's sister. Rachel, as did Rebekah upon hearing the news of Abraham's servant, ran home to tell her dad about the news. Upon learning of the news, Laban ran out to greet Jacob just as he did with Abraham's servant. As we read the different accounts, we see how the different journeys parallel one another. Jacob was invited back to their home where Jacob Jacob explained all things to Laban. There is a big difference between the two stories in that Abraham's servant came with camels and servants and gifts, but Jacob did not. We are not told of any other people with Jacob. In the previous chapter, Jacob is said to have slept with a rock, so Jacob probably looked a bit rough, or at least not like he had wealth, so it would be hard to say Laban thought Jacob had a lot of wealth, and this was why he was met with kindness and hospitality. We don't know the full extent of the conversations between Jacob and Laban, but the verse says all things were told, so it would be fair to assume Laban knew about the blessings to come. Jacob does stay with Laban, but only for a month, not a year, or the rest of his life. Jacob does begin to work for Laban, but it would be unfair and inappropriate for Jacob to work for free, even if the two were kin. In fact, it would not be right today for a family member to work for another family member for free. When Jacob starts to work for Laban, it appears that Jacob was a good worker, and Laban does not want to lose him. And here, Laban's other daughter, his older daughter, Leah, is introduced. According to the descriptions, Leah was not as attractive as Rachel. But it probably does not matter because Jacob had already fallen in love with Rachel. Maybe it's because they met first, or because they were divinely put together, whatever the true story is. Jacob wants to marry Rachel, and even offers his work for 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage.